Wait. So, okay. Okay, there we go. Okay, I see that some of you are a little bit early, which is just fantastic. Thank you. Let me. I'd be so grateful for those of you that are already here. Could you please just type a yes or something into the box and let me know that you can hear me? Let me know that I haven't done anything daft with my settings. Fabulous. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay. Brilliant. Fabulous. Fabulous. Thank you. Now, something that's still a little bit of a mystery to me. Hello from the IMO. Brilliant. Thank you. Something that's a little bit of a mystery to me. I have been through my settings 3 times again this morning to check that people cannot unmute themselves, but I'm still seeing that some people have their microphone. So if you are here now, could you please look on your screen and mute your microphone, please? I can't do it from here anymore. So I'm going to have to rely, because last week we had some issues with the, there we go, now I've lost my chat. Last week we had some issues with the there we go. Last week we had some issues with the microphone. So I'd be very, very grateful if you, as you're coming on, maybe I'll just put a message in here. Please ensure that your microphone is muted. Okay, brilliant. I'm just going to wait 1 more minute. Still got people coming on. Still got people coming onto the call. Had 180 people register for today. Now, I'm not expecting by any means to see everybody, because I know that life happens, and some people just decide that life's too short to spend an hour online with somebody during their lunch break. But okay, right. Yeah. And that you have joined with audio. Okay, because this is also a mystery to me. This is also a mystery to me that people can't hear, that some people can hear me and some people can't hear me. Thank you, Nabil. Choose Google Chrome. And now I know that some organizations won't let you choose your browser. And if that is indeed the case, then I'm going to say sorry in advance, and you're just going to have to wait until I upload the replay with the slides so that you can re-access it, excuse me. But when you came, well, it's no good me telling you if you can't hear me. Okay, let's just do this. When you joined. Audio. Isn't working. Then there's something, I mean, then there's something blocking. Check your pop-ups. Okay, right. I've got enough people saying I have the sound is fine. Yeah, you can exactly. You can also join on the phone and watch on the computer. There is a telephone number as well for you to be able to join here. Anyway, today there is a huge amount of work to get through. Emotional intelligence is something very, very, very dear to me. Fortunately, many organizations are now choosing to give their colleagues the opportunity to have training around soft skills. So everything I've given you so far, you know, over the past few weeks, we talked about applications and motivation letters and getting ready for an interview. And all those things, at the core of all those things is emotional intelligence. It's how you feel about yourself, how you feel about your relationships with other people. It's the confidence you have about yourself. It's the confidence when it comes to actually standing up and saying, this is what I'm doing, I'm proud of it. But also understanding that you have to sometimes just let go of the need for other people to acknowledge you. And this is one of the most difficult things in international organizations, is that because everybody's so busy and because there's so much pressure going on, that sometimes people just forget to say thank you, or you know, good job, or whatever. Some people don't mind that. Some people couldn't care less. But a lot of people, in my experience, do actually care. This all has to do with emotional intelligence, how we are managing our emotions. So people, I'm just going to type one more message. If you can't get on, apologies, and you will receive link later to be able to watch. Okay, right, and that is my last message, because there is a huge amount to go through. There is a huge amount to go through, and everybody's time is precious. So this workshop, that, you know, the thing I'm giving you today, emotional intelligence, is very much about how you feel, and it has a lot to do with stress. So I'd like you to, as we're going through, and you don't have to answer me, but I just want you to ask yourself, what caused you actually to register? What do you expect to get out of this masterclass, and which questions would you like to have answered? Because in my experience, a lot of people do have even more questions than usual when it comes to this particular subject. It's very sticky because it's very personal, and some of the stuff I'm going to share with you and suggest with you may completely disagree with me about, but I'm going to do it anyway, because my experience, it actually starts the conversation, and it encourages you and your colleagues to think differently, to consider there might be a different way of doing things. So as ever, it is absolutely impossible for me to cover everything in a very short time, but we are going to briefly be looking at what emotional intelligence is. I'm going to give you my model of emotional intelligence that I've developed specifically for people such as yourself working in international organizations. And right at the end, I'm going to give you a couple of practical tools to be able to manage the stress, manage the pressure, when you start feeling irritated, so that you can actually do something about it, so that by the time you leave today, you actually have you've got some very practical ideas about how you can manage things. Now, before we begin in earnest, and for those of you who can't hear, well, you can't hear me saying apologies, but please do ensure that your telephone and other programs are switched off. Please use the chat box to ask questions. And by the way, if some people can't hear, maybe check that nothing else is plugged in to your sound jack. Okay, use the chat box. There is no magic wand or miracle solution. It really is up to you. And as you know, I always encourage people to take action. If you sit there wondering, worrying, so-and-so doesn't respect me, I can't get on with my colleagues, they are taking credit for the work that I'm doing, all these kind of things that do tend to come up very frequently in the workplace, you sitting there feeling overwhelmed is not good. It's not good for you, and it's not good for your colleagues. The best thing you can always do is to take action. Sometimes it's very difficult to know which action to take, but it is up to you as an individual to take action, because as I'm going to be telling you several times, other people will not change. Okay, so oops, wrong button. There we go. So those of you that haven't been here before, my name is Gwyneth. Excuse me, I worked for more than 20 years in organizations. Excuse me. After I lost my job in 2011, I qualified as a personal performance coach because throughout my time in international organizations, I'm not a technical person. I'm not a human rights expert. I'm not a lawyer. I'm no good with numbers, accounts, all that kind of stuff. It's great, and I have the highest respect for people that deal with scientific subjects and those things that need real clarity and skill. People is my thing, and this is why I decided to qualify as a coach. In between times, I've written a few books, and thank you to those of you who've already ordered some of my books from the website. I provide a lot of workshops. As you know, each of the workshops, each of the masterclasses that you've attended are workshops that are available to you in your organizations. I established this company, Feel Good Coaching and Consulting, in 2013. One day I'll tell you how I got to that name. My mission is to absolutely help others to be the best version of themselves. And what you will learn today is the essence. It really is the essence. This is usually a 2-day workshop with a lot of interaction, with a lot of discussion. But it is my most popular workshop. It's the one I flew all over the world with this last year, and I've got some great bookings this year. Because, as I said, organizations, thankfully, are waking up to the fact that we need to look after our emotions. So what is emotional intelligence? Well, unlike IQ, the most important thing, one of the most important things to understand is that emotional intelligence cannot be measured. Okay, IQ, I'm not even going to pretend to understand how they measure that, but emotional intelligence cannot be measured for the simple reason that it's always going to be subjective. If ever I see somebody who writes in their application or their CV, I'm an emotional intelligent person, or they say, write to me, I consider myself to be emotionally intelligent, it doesn't actually matter. Because yes, it has to do with how you feel about yourself, but it's also about how others perceive you and your response or your reaction to those people. So be absolutely clear, emotional intelligence cannot be measured. And anybody who wants to challenge me on that anywhere in the world, then absolutely fine. I will challenge them back, because that's one of the key bases of understanding emotional intelligence. So, a little bit of theory. First of all, Edward Lee Thorndike was an American psychologist, and he was one of the first to actually identify the fact that we had different types of intelligence. He came up with these 3, and in between times, this has been very, very much more developed. But abstract intelligence is basically our ability to analyze, to think about things, to be able to learn. It's what happens inside our brains. Our mechanical intelligence is us moving, breathing, blinking our eyes, digesting, moving our hands, walking. That's all mechanical intelligence. And the third intelligence he spoke about was social intelligence, which we know today as brilliant, as social intelligence. Now, fast forward, about 80 years, and a couple of researchers also in the US at Harvard and Yale, Savoy and Mayer, they were the first ones to actually coin the term emotional intelligence. They were researchers. They weren't brilliant marketers. And so if you've heard of emotional intelligence before, you've probably heard it within the context of Daniel Goleman, who wrote a book and is world famous, has sold millions of copies. It's been translated into numerous languages. And this was his basic model of emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-regulation, management, motivation, empathy, and people skills. And this is also where I started. But as I was working more and more with international organizations, it became clear that this model in this order did not produce a natural flow. So I'm going to give you mine right now. So this is the model I've now designed to specifically support people in international organizations, taking into account the differences in cultures, ethnicities, backgrounds, academic backgrounds, nationalities, all of those things, because the focus has got to be much more on you. I don't like to use the word tolerate, maybe understanding accepting, acknowledging, because as you will surely know, that the UN Charter that most of the organizations, to my knowledge, have to sign up to, is that first and foremost, every single one of you, unless you're a consultant, you're not actually employed with any of the organizations, as an international civil servant, first and foremost, your loyalty is to the organization. And creed and race and color and religion and everything else comes afterwards. And that is very, very difficult for anybody in the UN system to deal with, because what we're talking about basically is for you to put your identity to the side. It's almost impossible. How can you not be the person that you are working in an international organization just because you're an international civil servant? So this is why I developed a slightly different model that I've tested out on a few people, got fabulous feedback in Vienna at the Atomic Ethics at the beginning of the year. And this is what I'm going to be sharing with you in number 2. So I've already spoken about the 3 types of intelligence. And I want to tell you why emotional intelligence is so very, very important. And to do that, I'm going to tell you a quick story. So in 1989, I began working at the UN. I was thrilled to bits to have one of these fabulous typewriters. Had a backspace on it, and I could put a piece of Tipex paper in to correct, because up until then I had been I'd learned to type on a mechanical typewriter. And there was such collegiality around the offices. We had people from all over the place, and it was just wonderful. On a Friday morning, the ladies, because back in 1989 it was still very, I'm going to call patriarchal, hierarchical. The ladies used to get together for breakfast. And it was just amazing. And we had a good old chat. It was absolutely fantastic. And the more senior staff, who were mostly male, get on with it. That's absolutely fine, just so long as the work gets done. It really was. It was a lovely, lovely time. And I absolutely loved it. Now, I was working in the front office of the organisation. I was working for the chef de cabinet of the Secretary General. So I was one of the first people in the UN system to get a computer. And it was very, very exciting. I had this Wang computer. At that time, diskettes this big, and you could only get one document onto a Wang diskette. And it was great. But I was still having these fabulous conversations with my colleagues, having breakfast on a Friday morning, and life was good. Now, in 1992, when the UN decided that computers and technology were not dangerous, and that it wasn't going to, bust the budget to put in all the necessary wiring and networks, most of us got one of these, fabulous little computers from Mr. Gates. And because, as I say, technology was very exciting, and it was shiny, and it was wonderful, and it was new, we started spending more time at our computers. And then with the advent of email, we didn't actually have to get up and go and talk to each other anymore. It was fantastic, just sitting there saying, yeah, okay, great. I'm going to do my, email, and off it went. Now, in 1993 then, when we were given access to the internet, to the World Wide Web, we could also send messages to our field offices. We didn't even have to pick up the telephone to them anymore. And then 1998, I don't know how old many of you are, but a lot of you will recognize this fabulous Nokia brick that became standard issue in all international organizations. And this meant that actually we were going to be available 24/7. It didn't matter what time we went home. Somebody could call us at 10 o'clock at night or 3 o'clock in the morning. And we felt important. We felt good about what we were doing, and we felt important. And unfortunately, these days, what it has actually led to is stress. Because these days we're telling ourselves we have to be available 24/7. We've got hundreds of emails, if not thousands of emails in our inbox. And we are constantly looking at our phones, checking our messages. People get up in the morning, and the first thing they do is to check their emails. Now, all of this technology is affecting our intelligence. It is encouraging us to use our mechanical intelligence more. This is why I say, if you've ever got to draft any reports or anything, and you just sit there at your laptop or your computer with your hands over the keyboard, you're going to have a really hard time thinking about content, thinking about structure, being particularly creative. When your hands hover over those keys, your mechanical intelligence is kicked in. Your brain is telling your fingers they have to be more concerned about getting the letters in the right order so that you don't make spelling mistakes than actually focusing on what it is that you're writing. It's one of the reasons, in my opinion, that burnout, depression, all of we're telling ourselves we have to be more effective, we have to be better, we have to work faster, and we are slowly but surely forgetting how to actually communicate with each other. So I've just given you the why of emotional intelligence there, which is my first element of this model. Now, clearly, I've just given you a little bit of a brush, but that's where I'm coming from. Okay, the technology is fantastic. I'm the first person to say that. The fact that I can speak to you today is absolutely wonderful. But over time, it is affecting our ability to be creative, to communicate, to show our feelings. And I'm not talking about going into work and shouting and screaming and being upset and taking our personal problems. I mean, there is a level of professionalism that everybody expects. But what I am talking about is actually just being willing to listen to somebody else and to not copy 10 people on an email because you think they've done something wrong, and you need to copy in everybody else just in case that person comes back to you and disagrees with you. I know it happens, but it's very, very sad actually to think that we've got to this state of affairs. So this is the model, the why of emotional intelligence. Then we talk about self-awareness, mindfulness, self-management, and then I talk about connection, and finally growth. So self-awareness, mindfulness. This is you, first of all, being aware of what your triggers are. Now, we haven't got time to do this entire exercise in the masterclass today, but take note, just write down triggers on your notepad if you've got one there, and think about, over the next couple of days, every time you feel yourself go, oh, if somebody's used the last cup in the kitchen for coffee, or if somebody hasn't put paper in the photocopier, or if somebody doesn't keep the door open or the elevator door open for you. Boy, have I had some discussions about these things. Or if somebody misses a deadline, or if somebody's late in for work and you have to cover for them and you don't feel comfortable, or if you've just spent an entire day doing a report and your supervisor or manager says, this is what I want, and you say, oh, what did I want? So there will be lots of things, and you don't even notice them happening anymore. So the first exercise for you today, or over the next couple of days, is to think about what your triggers are. What makes you irritated? What makes you angry? What scares you potentially? And I also want you to notice where that happens in your body. Now, when I get upset or angry, the first place I feel it is in my throat. And the second place, if it's continuing, I start grating my teeth. It took me a long, long time. It was only the dentist that said, Gwyneth, what are you doing to your teeth? That I actually realized I was starting to grate them. Some people get stiff shoulders, maybe a pain in your back, maybe your stomach starts churning, maybe your head just starts throbbing just a little bit, or maybe you get an earache, or maybe you feel a blood vessel on the side of your head here thumping. If you can track down, if you can identify the triggers that start, you'll already be onto a good thing. Because once you've actually written them out, you've increased your awareness about where that stress and where that pressure is coming from. Because when you can do that, you can actually do something about it. The truth of the matter is, your body will always know what's happening way before you've actually started thinking, putting into words, oh, I should have said that, or what your response or what your reaction is going to be. It always starts with an emotion. And this is, again, with technology, this is something we are telling ourselves, it's not emotion, it's technology, or it's logic. We try to use our logic to explain or to justify an emotion, and it doesn't work. It just does not work. And it's why people, do actually have problems. So please understand, your body knows the truth about a situation before you even begin thinking it, analysing it, understanding, what's going on. Listen to your body. Self-management is the third part of this particular model. Self-management also has a lot to do with your motivation, because sometimes when people get upset, it's because they've lost the big picture. So again, there are some questions here I'd like you to think about. Why do you actually do the job that you do? What was it that encouraged you to apply for that job, however long ago, months, years, whenever? What was it? Now, we've had this conversation before, if you've been on previous masterclasses, that of course money is always going to be a motivator, because we all have to pay the bills. You might just even enjoy the prestige of working in an international organization in a multicultural environment. But I want you to be absolutely clear on why you do the job you do. Because if you can take yourself back to that moment when you decided to apply for the job that you're doing and remember how you felt, that can sometimes be enough to help you just come down a little bit and just put things into perspective. And the fact that somebody's just, giving you your report back, even though you worked so hard, it doesn't matter. It does matter, of course, if you are going to go on the defensive and you're going to resist and you're not going to say, well, what would you like? How could I have done it better? It's also your fault potentially for not actually clarified with that person in the first place. Could you please let me know exactly what it is you expect me to do, what you expect the outcome to be? Quite frequently, supervisors, managers, unfortunately, haven't thought about it enough themselves, because they too have got a huge amount of work to do. So it all gets very complicated. So why do you do the job that you do? What motivates you to get out of bed in the morning? And what do you love about your job? Now, if there is not a single thing that you can identify that you love about their job, then I would challenge you to consider whether you should still be doing what you're doing. Because if you don't love what you're doing, if there's nothing about your job that you enjoy, you are heading for trouble. And purely by chance, in the UK this week, it is Mental Awareness Week. There's a lot of stuff going on about how we really need to be looking after ourselves better. Respect doesn't come from other people. Respect starts within yourself. And if you are doing something that you do not enjoy, you are literally repressing, you are pushing down your personality every single day. Every evening when you go to sleep, every morning when you wake up, you are pushing your personality down. Now, clearly, things such as, illnesses such as depression, there's a lot more that contributes to that. But burnout and depression, it's these little bits of stress on a daily basis that begin to evolve into more serious mental illnesses. And by preventing yourself from enjoying what it is that you really, really want to, what you're doing, be that, you might enjoy your job, but you don't like the people you're working with. Whatever it is, if there is nothing that you love about your job, I would encourage you to have a very serious conversation with yourself to consider whether you actually want to stay where you are. Now, I know that sounds a bit dramatic, but like I said, this is something that's very, very close to my heart. You're worth it. You are absolutely so worth it. Now, the way that your personality has been developed clearly has a lot to do with your parents, with your teachers, where you grew up, how you grew up, the economy where you grew up, whether you were in the Mediterranean or closer to the Arctic, whether it was warm, whether it was cold. So many things have an influence into the person that you are. But the thing that helps you to continue to be who you are is something called the reticular activating system. And again, unfortunately, I don't have a huge amount of time to go into a lot of detail, but it is a group of cells at the base of your brain. It acts as a security gate between the conscious and the subconscious. It reinforces your values, your beliefs, which foods you like, what you don't like. It identifies and establishes how you judge others, how you behave, and it also reinforces your sense of self-worth and your ability to succeed. Now, when you are small, when you're a child, and you've got this sponge-like brain, and you're hearing all this stuff, maybe you were unfortunate enough to be told as a child, you're so clumsy. And many children will then grow up, if they've knocked a glass over the table, they will grow up thinking they're clumsy. And it can actually cause some people to retreat into themselves because they're just worried about going out with other people just in case they knock a glass over. Sounds ridiculous, but that's the way it is. What else can you do? Let me give you another example. If you're shopping in a supermarket, if any of you've got children, and a lot of the supermarkets put sort of chocolates and sweets next to the tills as you come to pay, and your child says, "I want chocolate," and you say no. It's very rare. I've never actually seen it, but I'm going to say it's very rare because there might be one or two out there. The child is not going to stand there and reason with you why they should have the chocolate. They're going to usually scream or sulk or kick the trolley that they're sitting in or run away or hide their face. Or children react emotionally. And again, these reactions, the emotional reaction, is so strong that it is connected to a certain situation, and you bring this through with you into adulthood. It's one of the reasons too that many people have fond memories, and I always use a female example because 40, 50, 60 years ago there weren't many men in the kitchen. But it's also, if you can remember sitting with your grandmother or an auntie or even your mum, and they made something really special for you. It might have been dumplings with stew or apple strudel or, oh, golly, God, my granny made so much. Blue sprouting and mashed potato. And it's not even the food. It's the fact that you felt secure and warm and safe and loved. That gives you that connection to that food. So I hope all that makes sense. But I want you to be aware of how you have developed your beliefs, your likes, your dislikes, and your judgment of other people, because there is no right or wrong. Something else I want to briefly tell you about is something called the imposter syndrome. And this is also, ironically, the older we get, and people who are more qualified, the more exams and things that they've done, the worse it gets. Now, this is something I don't see so much in the UN system on the sort of GS side of things, but I do see it on the P and the D side of things very much. And it really is, it's almost as if people are worried about being found out because they feel as though they are a fake, particularly if you know that you've got political clout on your side and you've got a job, and other people know that you've got the job for the political clout. You know what? If you couldn't do the job, hopefully you would not be doing the job. But you still, when you're, the more senior you become, the more, what's the word I'm looking for? The more need there is to appear professional. And that can actually lead to a breakdown communication in the entire team. Because as a manager, if you are not prepared to talk to, understand, support your team, you're going to have a really, really hard time getting them to perform. They might do their absolute minimum because they're getting a salary and they come in at 9 and they go home at 5. But they will not be actively engaged. Now, staff engagement is something I can't even talk about today, but it's a big, big issue as well. The more qualified we are, the older we get, the worse this gets. We start comparing ourselves to people as well. I had clients come in saying, I'm too old to be doing this anymore. It's a load of rubbish. The younger people, the people, the 25, the 30-year-olds, they've got their contribution to make as well, but they will never, ever replace your unique contribution. So, excuse me, nobody can make you feel anything that you don't want to. You cannot influence others unless they choose to be influenced. Every single reaction that you have, every single judgment that you make is yours. But you are so used to responding in that particular way, and you've never questioned yourself if it's the right thing or the wrong thing, that you just assume that's how it is. I'm going to give you a very, very brief example, and I'm sure a lot of you will resonate with this. So imagine you've got a presentation coming up. It's very, very important because you're going to be presenting a project. You need approval because it's worth a couple of million euros, and it means that you are going to be employed for the next couple of years. And the day arrives and everybody's fine, and everybody comes into the room. Everybody sat down. Your presentation is fantastic. You've practiced and practiced and practiced, and you're very confident and, a little bit nervous. It's always good to be a little bit nervous, but you're confident that fantastic. You feel great. Everybody sits down and you start giving your presentation. And after a couple of minutes, you see somebody at the back of the room and they're kind of on their phone, and you know that they're messaging and you're mildly irritated, but that's okay, whatever. And then a few minutes later, the person next to them kind of nudges them, and the person doing the messaging laughs. Oof, you start to feel a bit more irritated. And you can see them kind of having a bit of a major conversation going on at the back of the room, although it's all kind of whisper, and looking down at the phone. And your irritation begins to grow. You miss you lose connection with what it is you're saying. You can't remember what's on the next slide. You lose your concentration, and then you're angry at yourself. Oh, for goodness sake, why was I so stupid paying attention to those idiots at the back of the room? Anyway, this continues, and then the chap who'd been doing the messaging on the phone actually gets up, shrugs their shoulders at you, and walks out. And you lose it. You're so upset because this presentation was so important to you, because if you don't get approval, you are out of a job. This is your livelihood, and how dare they just chat all the way through and then leave? If they knew that they had another appointment, that they shouldn't have even come to the meeting in the first place, or sent somebody in their place to replace them. And then you go out of the room and you see one of your colleagues and they say, "Hey, how did it go?" And you're so upset, can't believe it, they're so rude, they talked all the way through my presentation and then so and so left. And then your colleague says to you, "Oh my goodness, didn't you hear?" And you say, "What?" And they say, "Well, that colleague you're just talking about, they got a message from their spouse, from their partner, to say that one of their children had been involved in a car traffic accident, and they've had to go to hospital." And then your reaction is, "Oh no, that's dreadful." Two very, very different responses. And the reason that you respond like that is that in the first instance, you grew up learning, being told by your parents, by your teachers, by people at university, by your bosses, whoever, it's very rude to talk if somebody else is talking. If somebody else is giving a presentation or is hosting a meeting, chairing a meeting, it's very rude to talk if someone else is talking. So that's the first reaction. I'm upset. I'm so angry. What an idiot. The second reaction is absolute compassion, empathy. Oh my goodness, if that was my child, how would I feel? It's all emotion. And this is why I want you to understand that you choose your emotions, but you choose them based on habit. And you've been using your emotions in a particular way for as long as you've been alive. So this is not something that you can change overnight. There's a lot of science around, smashing beliefs and creating new neural pathways. We know so much about the brain. Neuroscience has just come in leaps and bounds since the 60s, since the first astronauts went to the moon. It's remarkable what we've learned about our brains. You can change those emotions. You can change those responses and reactions, and you can learn to kind of let go of that irritation and that stress. But it takes will and it takes commitment. You have to want to. So connection, well, some people will say, "That's just the way I am. There's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I want to do about it. Take it or leave it." And you might argue that, okay, that is who you are. But actually what I find is that most people who say that, upon closer, when we have a closer conversation, we dig a little bit deeper, what actually comes out is that this is just a face that they're putting on, because they don't feel accepted, acknowledged, respected by their colleagues. So they feel as if they have to, put on this front, pretend to be somebody else. Oh, I don't care. I'm doing it like this, and, whatever. So are you one of those people? Or have you got a colleague who's one of those people? So again, it's time maybe to just kind of step back and not judge that person, rather just accept what it is that they want to tell you. Really listen to what it is they're saying. Are they saying, I don't care, do what you want? Or are they saying, I really care actually, because I've been working very hard on this and I don't feel that I'm getting the acknowledgement from you that I need? So just think about those things and consider what you could potentially be doing differently. Now, this is pretty much what the UN system looks like. In very, very general. At the very top, you've got the boss, then you've got your senior managers, you've got middle managers, team leaders, and then there's everybody else. But as human beings, we have evolved so much over the past 60 years. We do not enjoy being told what to do by other people. It's very, very difficult to have somebody tell you each and every day, do this, do that, do this, do that, don't do that. You're not allowed to do that. Every time again that happens, it's like, oh, for goodness sake, leave me alone. I know, because one of my bosses, when I was 24 or 25? I had a very, very difficult year. I was in tears at least once a week when I went home. I would have telephone calls in the evening. It was an absolute nightmare. Until I actually realized that person wasn't getting at me, rather they were more concerned. It was a woman. She was one of the very first women D1s in the entire UN system, and she was protecting herself. She didn't want to give anybody a single millimeter of opportunity to criticize her. And she wanted, she was making sure that she did everything absolutely correctly. When I learned that, I understood that actually she's probably one of the best teachers I've ever had in my entire life. But the question is, are you willing to actually be accountable for yourself? Instead of laying the blame at the bosses, the supervisors, the managers, wherever you happen to be in that triangle, are you actually prepared to be accountable for yourself? Are you actually prepared to lead yourself first and foremost, as I've done in this small diagram? Are you actually prepared to say, this isn't working, I need to think about how I could be doing it differently? Are you prepared, as I said a few minutes ago, to go to the person who's given you a task to say, may I please clarify with you exactly what you expect me to do? Which outcome are you expecting? What is my audience? Who is my audience rather? When is the deadline? These are very, very simple things that people can do to get rid of a lot of miscommunication, a lot of misunderstanding. And I promise you, you will also feel better about yourself, because I said at the beginning, if you sat there not taking action, just getting frustrated and upset, it's very easy to go into overwhelm, over time into burnout, depression, and worse. Whereas if today, there's no coffee cups left, okay, let me go and ask my colleagues, should we buy some more coffee cups? Should I put a sign up in the kitchen? Whatever it is, but taking action is always going to help you feel better about a situation. Now, again, the whole issue of leadership is a very, very big subject, and something that unfortunately we can't go into a huge amount here. What I have done, though, is when I put this video onto my website, and I will give you the slides again, you will see that on the last two slides, I've given you some suggestions for additional reading. I've also given you a few video links, and there is one there from a woman called Brené Brown on blame, and I would highly recommend you watching it. It's fantastic. Another way that we can actually connect with people is to use coaching. Now, coaching as a management tool has taken a very, very long time to get into Europe. In the US, it's much more popular, although there are still people that think, it's just kind of a very fluffy, kind of hippie kind of thing. In my experience, one of the reasons I decided to do it was because I couldn't believe how easy it was to transform people's lives, including my own. Coaching is non-critical, it's non-judgmental, and it's absolutely confidential. This means that if I'm a manager using a coaching approach, I'm helping my team member, my colleagues, to come up with their own solutions. The solutions that they come up with might not be the solution that I choose, but by allowing other people to give their input, I am allowing them a voice. And this is exactly, and it doesn't actually matter if you're a manager or not. If you are just, again, prepared to listen to somebody, to ask them, instead of assuming, then it could completely transform the way that your working relationship you have with them. Now, harassment and bullying, I want to touch on very, very briefly as well, because one of the biggest issues with harassment and bullying is that it is subjective. And although there is a code of conduct, you know, what is professionalism, what is allowed, what is not allowed, because we're talking about human beings, and anybody who is, you know, gone through harassment or gone through bullying, it's an emotion. You're not thinking, oh, that person is bullying me. It's like, I'm really upset. I feel like this person has violated my personal space. I feel like they've just criticized me so much and that they don't value me. It's an emotion. Someone has a microphone on. So again, there is another video on one of the 2 slides at the end by Brooke Gibbs. Absolutely fantastic. And what it is, basically what it comes down to is that if you go into the defensive, you're giving away your power. And again, this is a difficult thing to do, but please do go and watch that video. If somebody says to you, why did you do it like that? I can't believe you're so stupid. And, you know, they're going on. Instead of, you know, going into emotional meltdown. And again, this takes practice and it's hard to do. Okay, I understand that, you know, clearly what I've given you wasn't what you wanted, and I know I don't always get it right, but could we sit down then for 20 minutes so that you can tell me what it is you want? And when you do that, again, you're taking action, and you're putting the ball back in the other person's court, and frequently that will take any negative emotion out of that situation. Now, clearly that is not going to work always, and unfortunately, you know, I hear from staff reps time and again that frequently when people go to their staff rep, for example, by that time it's already too late. If you're willing to take action immediately, as soon as you start to feel bad, then you might have a chance of actually sorting out the situation. Make no mistake, harassment and bullying is very, very difficult because everybody will view it differently. Everybody has a different opinion about what constitutes harassment and bullying, even if there are very strict guidelines. I just wanted to get that in there because it is a big, big issue. Now, growth. Everything I've told you so far in the past 40 or so minutes, a lot of information there. I've given you a couple of exercises. And changing any time is going to be scary because you're questioning yourself. You are challenging yourself to consider that you might be wrong. And that's very, very difficult for any of us to do because for a long, long time, we've believed that we were right. So instead, I want you to ask yourself this question before you go away today. If everything stays the same as it is, and you're still wondering what you want to do in 6 months or a year or even 5 years, or maybe you're in an environment where you don't feel you know, that you're being acknowledged or valued, or maybe you are working in a fantastic team, but there's just something missing. Don't you owe it to yourself to actually be accountable to yourself, to lead yourself, to claim your personal power, but also to allow others to claim theirs? This means suspending judgment. This means stopping yourself reacting and responding very quickly. Just stopping and listening to your body, being aware of the emotion, questioning yourself, what is this and what am I going to do about it? A bumblebee, if it gets stuck inside a window, I'm sure you've seen it, or a wasp, or most little animals actually, you know, if they're trying to get out, they'll just keep banging, banging, banging against the window. What they don't realize is that if they just did a little turn, they could actually fly out of the window. And that's basically what you need to do. If you keep on doing what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always got. could you do something slightly different that is going to make things better? I love this quote. If you limit your choices only to what seems possible or reasonable, you disconnect yourself from what you truly want, and all that is left is a compromise. And you are worth so much more than a life of compromise. I sincerely believe that every single human being on this planet has the right to enjoy every breath of every minute of every day, and that includes when you're at work. So we're getting to the end now. I want to give you a couple of very practical tools to manage stress and pressure whenever you're starting to feel a little bit, up in the air. And I'm just going to give you 3 very simple ways. There are many more, but I'm just going to give you 3 today so that you can check them out. Writing stuff down, and I'm talking about using a pen and paper, not a computer or a laptop, because again, your mechanical intelligence will be kicking in and the emotion won't be there. Writing it down, get it out of your brain and onto paper. Nobody has to read it. You can burn it, you can eat it, you can put it in a journal, keep a diary, whatever it is. But the very act of writing your thoughts, your emotions down onto paper and then reading themselves back to you will give you a completely different perception of what's going on, and potentially will also encourage your brain to find a solution to whatever it is that you've just written about. Something else is something called the emotional freedom technique, or EFT, and again there is a link to that video, a chappie called Brad Yates on YouTube. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. In German it's called Klopfen, for those of you German speakers, and I'm not telling you that you're crazy, but it's tapping just for a few times on the meridian points around your face, your collarbone, under your arm, and on top of your head. Now, if you're a sports fan, sometimes you may see footballers or rugby players, you may see them tapping their collarbone just a few times before they've got a penalty coming up. And that's literally telling themselves, getting rid of the pressure, getting rid of the stress. I can do this. I can do this. Even though I'm really worried about missing, I'm going to do it. So have a look at that as well. The EFT, the tapping, in my personal experience, has been the biggest help. The first few times I did it, I thought, you must be kidding me. Tapping my head, there's absolutely no way that this is ever going to work. But like I said, I want to provide you with things that you can try. Then you can decide whether they're rubbish or not. But if you would at least try them, that would be fabulous. So go and have a look at that video when you see the slides later on. And Brad Yates. And then breathing. So this is what we call a pattern interrupter. If you are in a place, particularly at work, and you can't start writing down what you're feeling and you can't start tapping, change your breathing. You will distract your brain for a millisecond, which will be just long enough to break the emotion increasing into anger or frustration or upset or whatever. So we usually breathe for equal amounts. So we inhale for 3 or 4 and we exhale for 3 or 4. Okay, we breathe very regularly. If you are beginning to feel a little bit, there's too much work, they're getting on my nerves, I wish they'd be quiet, try just for 30 seconds, breathing in for the count of 3 and breathing out for the count of 5. And if you, like I said, if you just do that for 30 seconds and you just focus on your breathing, even if you do it for 10 seconds, you will have interrupted that little storm that might be gathering in your stomach or in your throat or in your shoulders. And you will be able to kind of just step back. As I keep saying, though, all of these things require practice. And in the beginning, you may not feel comfortable doing them, but these are the 3 most effective ways I know of actually managing my emotions if I'm starting to feel a little bit grated. Now, of course, that there's meditation, there's changing your physical state, there are many more things, but for in the interest of keeping it short today, these 3 I would absolutely recommend. So we are, excuse me, coming to the end now. I just realized I didn't have my cup of tea. The most important thing about emotional intelligence, you cannot manage or influence the emotions of others unless they choose to allow you to do so. And if you say to somebody, don't do that, and their teacher used to say to them, don't do that, and they didn't like their teacher, they're going to come back to you and say, why shouldn't I? Okay, that's a very, very simple example. Whereas if you say to somebody, don't do that, and they like their teacher who had said, don't do that, you'd say, okay, I won't do it again. Just think about it. No one can make you feel something or cause you to react in a certain way unless you choose to do so. This is so, so difficult to really take on board. But it is life-changing when you understand that when you're happy, when you're sad, when you're excited, when you're tired. We know so much about the brain, even that when you're tired, you know, you need a certain number of hours each night to help your brain come down, to help it process everything. This also has a lot to do with the RAS, because our subconscious is taking in around 40 million bits of data per second, and our conscious brain can actually only deal with 40 bits of data per second. You know, it's a huge difference between the two. So your brain has got a huge amount going on that you don't even know about throughout the day. But understand that every choice you make, every response you give, every statement you make, every judgment you make of other people, it is based on your background, it is based on your childhood, and at some point during your life, you have chosen to do so because the emotion was very strong. Don't like Brussels sprouts. Why don't I like Brussels sprouts? Because the grandmother made me eat them when I was small. Whoa! Love blue sprouting and mashed potato because I love being with my other granny. There will be things in your past, but question yourself, where do those beliefs, where do those likes and dislikes come from? And the only person really that can make things different is you. So that was a very whirlwind, whoops, Daisy, that was a whirlwind tour, excuse me, through emotional intelligence. We talked about what it is. And you know, how it's actually developed over the century or so, and why it is so important versus our mechanical intelligence. I've given you my model very, very briefly, specifically designed to support people such as yourself in an international environment where there is so much going on. And I've given you 3 practical tools to be able to manage stress and pressure if you want to. Now, I appreciate this has been very, very, very fast, but do you have any questions? Everybody's been very good. And I still don't understand how people manage to turn their microphones on. That's beyond me. Does anybody have any questions for me? Nope. Okay. Again, another fabulous quote. If you really want to escape the things that harass you, what you're needing is not to be in a different place, but to be a different person. Go inside of yourself. Love yourself. Acknowledge yourself. And just, if you're not sure about some things, question yourself, where did those beliefs come from? Ask yourself, what are your stress triggers? Identify where in your body you're feeling those things so that you can then begin to manage them. Okay, thank you. It's been very enlightening. Currently, how to deal with difficult people in your team or subordinates. Yeah. Okay, mindful first, then think, and then practice. Yeah, food for thought. Okay, brilliant. Yeah, you know, it's difficult. It's really difficult when you're working with lots of other people. The blame game is also, it's something, it's much easier to say that it's somebody else's fault than to actually consider what you could have done differently to actually prevent that thing from happening in the same place. And if you've got somebody difficult in your team or subordinates, Again, if you're a manager, then you have to find a way to deal with that. Now I'm going to, this is the work I do. I go into organizations, I provide a lot of workshops. I also facilitate, I'm going to call it team building, but it's not team building. It's much more about actually promoting understanding and tolerance within the team so that the job gets done. Because you, like I say, each of you has a unique contribution to make, and you are too important for anybody to be messing about. And in my experience as well, I've never met anybody who actually has told me they get up in the morning and think to themselves, right, I wonder who I can upset today. I wonder what problems I can cause today. Very frequently, there are underlying issues that the person just is not feeling as if their contribution is worth anything in the team. Okay, have we got any more? Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. They project their own uncertainty. Well, you know what? So I've just had a question there. If you've got a supervisor or a manager, somebody who's projecting their uncertainty onto you, this sounds cruel. You've got to find a way to deal with it, because they are not going to change. They are not going to change unless they want to change. And if they are comfortable projecting their uncertainty onto you, you have to find a different way to deal with it. And again, this can be very difficult. It might be, I sense that maybe you're not confident about my contribution. Could we have 10 or 15 minutes next week or later today or whatever? Could we just sit down with you and ask you what your expectations are? If ever you go into a new job, the first thing you should be doing on your first day, if not in the first couple of days, is, if they haven't said it to you, is to go to your boss and say, what do you expect me to do? How are you going to know I'm doing a good job? Set the tone right at the beginning of the working relationship. Have an open conversation with people. It's a problem in the UN system because this hierarchy is so very, very strict. And the UN is a monster. It's not going to change anytime soon. It's a huge machine, and the line management is necessary for a number of reasons. But that does not mean that you cannot go to somebody and say, you know what, actually, this is how I felt during this process. Could we just have 5 or 10 minutes to talk about it so that I understand what you want from me, or what you would like me to do differently next time? Don't wait until your performance evaluation comes along in 6 months or a year, and all of a sudden you find yourself having a verbal warning because somebody isn't happy with what you do. So that's the answer to that one. Okay. Which Dan, I'm not sure which. Oh, you mean the professional? Do you mean the professional mastermind package that I offered last time? If that's the one you mean, Diane, yes. Okay. I tell you what I'll do. When I send the email out, I'm not going to put this up on the website because I really appreciate the people that have taken the time to come here today. I'm very grateful to you. I know it's your lunchtime. I know your time is precious. What I'm going to do, Diane, is I am going to refresh the link, and I will send you the link, and I will keep it open until close of business on Friday. Okay, 48 hours. Is that okay? Okay, Diane? And then anybody else who missed out on that package last week as well, then you can sign up if you would like to. Cool. Excuse me. Okay, the resources, when I send you the replay, you will see that there are 2 additional slides after what you've seen here today. There are some additional resources for reading, and there are also some links to YouTube videos that I believe that you will find very useful as well. So take a look at those. Okay, that's the resources. Okay, right, so that's what I will do. I will, like I said, I will recap the offer. I will keep it open until Friday, so that gives you a little bit of time. Thank you. That's what I want to say is thank you. As I love doing this. I could talk for days. I frequently do. One thing I'd be very, very grateful for you for, I'm going to send out to everybody on the list, is I'm going to send out an anonymous link to a feedback form so that I can provide it to your relative organisations and to Fixer. The other thing I would love to know from you is if you have indeed found these lunchtime masterclasses useful, would you like me to repeat later in the year? Or would you actually, are there additional topics around this entire confidence building, presentation, self-marketing, communications with colleagues? Are there other topics that you would like me to cover? Please let me know those things, because as I said, I absolutely love doing this. And yep. Okay, you're very welcome. I absolutely love doing this. The other thing, and you're going to get this in the email as well, is that if you want to leave this mailing list, please unsubscribe, because I'm not going to delete everybody off the system. When you signed up, you will have seen in the email footer, now and again, I will keep you updated of, potentially other webinars or anything that I'm doing that I think may be of interest to you. If you don't want to hear from me anymore, and I will not be offended, because I'm very emotionally intelligent, I won't be offended. If you don't want to hear from me anymore, please do unsubscribe. There's a button at the bottom of the email that you will see. Wait until you get the replay this afternoon or tomorrow morning, and then unsubscribe. And you will never hear from me again. I won't be offended. Remember too that all the links to the replays and the other resources and PDF versions of my books and everything I do for international organizations, it's all on my website, /international, and the password all uppercase inter and then all lowercase national. You are so very welcome, everybody. Thank you. So, okay, a little bit longer than 60 minutes, but you have been truly amazing. And I look very, very much forward to being in touch. And actually, maybe I'll just get the replay sent out now, especially for those people who were not able to hear me. Stay fabulous. Loads of love. And I shall talk to you soon.